I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, and joining me here on this fine evening, Patrick McCray, as always. Gordon, how are you guys?
Good, good. I'll be your time life operator this evening.
We're here to discuss 1970 Parallel Time, but before we do, Gordon, who got you into Dark Shadows? When did you get into it, and who got you into it?
Well, I actually got into it in the early 90s with the revival. And it was when MPI started re-releasing the videos, on VHS. And since I was commuting back and forth to college, and near where I lived, there was a video store. And for those of you, who don't know, you actually had to go someplace to get videos to watch. You couldn't just download them off the internet.
Yep.
And I started, I was old enough that I could barely remember maybe the first run. I could remember kind of the intro, but that's about it.
Gordon, you were from its actual broadcast?
Yeah, but I was like 2 or 3 years old.
Okay.
So it wasn't like it, I have no memory of storylines. But I started getting into it, and it's and I was, I attended the DS convention in LA in 91 and 95. And so I kind of came at it from, if you wanted to claim that, yes, because I was coming from college classes to a video store on the way home, technically, yes, I ran home to watch it, but not in the way many other people can say that.
Running from the authorities.
Yes, basically. I was kind of a miscreant, a lot of penny theft. I'm no longer allowed to own firearms. That's a whole different story.
Well, wait, Gordon, I got to ask, man, were you driving a white Bronco at the time?
No, I was not.
He was driving it very slowly.
I had to ask. Who's your favorite Dark Shadows character?
Hang on, wait a minute. You realize that's sort of, if OJ is Barnabas, which is obvious, of course, everyone makes that analogy. Kato Kaelin is Willie Loomis.
Yes.
He really is. Anyway, I digress.
Let's see, my favorite character. Well, I'm going to do two. One, my absolute favorite is Angelique, because it's I can never understand why Barnabas would settle for Josette, because she's all very prim and proper, but Angelique is she knows magic. I've never have to worry about anything ever again. It's boss gives me a hard time at work. Oh, Angie, can you help me here? She would do that.
But Barnabas Tony Nelson about the whole thing.
Yeah, he's
on any of the magic helping him. It's really show.
Yeah, I mean, Barnabas is kind of a simp. He is what we'd call today a soy boy, but I think I'm using that term wrong. But the other character is Professor Stokes. I mean, how can you not love Thayer David?
Right. Is he? Many people compare him to Van Helsing. Do you?
No, I think he's kind of more of a. I mean, he's more of to really pull a very, very obscure reference, more of a Carnacki, an occult detective, except instead of a detective, he's more of a professor. So,
in my opinion, I think there's a lot of characters out there similar to Stokes, or maybe have taken from Stokes. You see the detective from Twin Peaks, or even, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, Yusuke Uramari, Spirit Detective.
Same to you. Wait, no, who?
You don't want to say to Yusuke Uramari with in a nice kind of spicy chili sauce over a bed of rice. It's wonderful.
We're all in trouble now. We'll never wind up on the writing staff of Star Trek Discovery at this rate.
Oh my god!
Now, who is this character that Jewel that you're discussing?
Okay, this kid, he's a Japanese, I believe, junior high student, and he's somewhat arrogant and perverse in many ways, and he gets killed by saving a little girl who's playing, I think it's a boy or girl, I forget that part, but he saves a child from getting hit by a vehicle in the middle of the street. He pushes the kid out the way and he dies. And he sort of has to now get his body back to become the spirit detective of the underworld, so to speak.
Cool.
It only lasted I think, in fairness to them, real quick, because we're not here to discuss that, they went too much Dragon Ball. If you're familiar with Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, they went too much into I feel anyway, they went too much into Dragon Ball. I think, again, it was popular. It still is today. I get why they copied that formula, like in their tournament style, and they shouldn't have did it. They should have went more horror than. But again, it was made for. Well, I question whether it was made for kids, but it was on, Cartoon Network. What do you do?
I was feeling kind of Dragon Ball Z, but my urologist kind of took care of that with the.
Yeah, and ironically, Dragon Ball was the name of the punk band that Patrick and I were in.
That's true.
Really? That's awesome. I like that. Okay, guys, so we're here to discuss 1970. I'll try
because
to.
I in drag, and he dressed like Rover from The Prisoner. And
right.
So you Dragon Ball.
Yeah, it was kind of a performance art piece. You just kind of had to be there. It was the 90s.
Gordon played the theremin, and I had one of those Fisher-Price xylophones that I put on an electric bass with the distortion up all the way, and we played covers of TV themes.
You know what you guys probably had that Avril Lavigne didn't?
Talent?
That's right. That's right. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So we're here to discuss 1970 Parallel Time. You have Barnabas who sees this room in the East Wing, and it's full of people that are similar to the ones that he knows, but it's a alternate time band. What were you guys' thoughts when you first saw this?
Gordon, did you know that this sequence was coming? Or was it a surprise to you?
It was a surprise to me. I think it's and especially coming off the Leviathan storyline, because it's the Leviathan story, at least for me, the Leviathan storyline was like a bit of a mood piece, and it just suddenly went to this kind of, okay, well, he's seeing things, but they're not there, and it kind of felt like I could see in the writer's room, they're like drinking bourbon at like 11 in the morning and thinking, okay, what do we do? Okay, we go into a room and they're all there, except they're doing different stuff. And it was like, okay, that's a great idea. What do we do with that? Well, we're going to be filming. We're going to have half our cast gone because they'll be filming a movie. Okay, let's go crazy. It's what is it? Is it a different world? It's a parallel time band. So Barnabas walks in and boom.
I think there are two big influences, maybe three, that we have to remember. And it all comes down to, I think, Matthew Hall, Sam Hall's son. Because Matthew, I really think, was a huge influence on the show. Because he's the prime demographic for the show, because they're a big kid audience, and B, he's sort of media aware, and he and David Hennessy are reading comic books, and Sam Hall is right in the house. And so, thanks to Matthew Hall, I think Sam would have been exposed to three important things. One was the DC multiverse, the different Earths. Earth 1, Earth 2, and rather than it being an opposite world, it really is kind of more of an Earth 2 sort of thing. So I think that's where a lot of the DC and Marvel influence on the show comes from. He also probably would have seen Mirror Mirror on Star Trek, and the episode The Antimatter Man of Lost in Space, which is a really, really, really good episode. Hang on. So those things are all huge influences. Yeah. Hang on. Sorry, I have a burning coal issue that I have to deal with.
Got it.
Okay, terrific. Pardon me. I didn't know fire would break out, so put that on there.
Okay.
And then, as my assistant Rebecca is, and then take those and put those on there. Sorry, if you saw this, it's really pretty dramatic. Can you see the coal? My God, it's spectacular. Okay, very good. And I'm back. Thank you, Rebecca. But it went all over the floor at one point. It's hard to do. So anyway, I think he would have encountered all three of those things, and those are big influences. You know, you got a really weird thing on the show because the cast, I hate to say the A cast, but I mean the A cast in terms of who was cast really first. You know, the A cast all goes up to Terrytown to film the movie. Man. So they have to cover for this. And but also, and that's the easy explanation, you know, so we're gonna do sort of this parallel, not parallel universe, because Roger's kind of the same. A lot of the characters are kind of the same. But what you really see, and this for me is the interesting part of Parallel Time, is that you see the show recreated for the second time, because the first time it's recreated is in 1897. And that basically is a reboot of the show, building on all of the lessons that they learned before. You know, now they know they have permission to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, 1970 Parallel Time, which comes just about a year after 1897 began, is yet another reboot where they kind of say, you know, Catherine Lee Scott it does a lot more than just pour coffee. What if she were the mistress of Collinwood? No. And David Selby is a commanding, intimidating character, bafflingly heterosexual for the show. What if he were the head of the troubled head of the household? And what if we got rid of any reason for Angelique to be anything other than a cold-hearted badass? And, you know, maybe Julia doesn't have to be in love with Barnabas. Maybe she's one of the villains because Grayson Hall plays such a wonderful heavy when she needs to. And so if you're just joining the show at that point, you know, we talk about joining the show at different times. That's not Parallel Time. That's Primary Time. That's the new show. Imagine if the show had taken off like wildfire again for whatever reason with the Parallel Time storyline. They would have stuck with it. That would have become the new Dark Shadows. And that would have been what people knew as Dark Shadows. And that's the curious thing, is that it's actually a backdoor pilot for a new show that didn't quite work out.
Go ahead, Gordon.
I was about to say, I think too, it was also, you know, they've always talked about doing the horror Rolodeck. And when you're doing a different show, they kind of chose, when you think about it, they chose two works that were kind of about, they were more psychological in nature, you know, because they did Rebecca as well as Jekyll and Hyde. And I think, you know, to Patrick's point, you know, if they're reinventing the show, they're not going to necessarily rely on the old reliable, like Frankenstein, Dracula, Turn of the Screw.
Because they've done it.
Yeah, because they've done it. And it also puts them, I mean, if you look at the show, like I would say from like post 1897, it gets a little bit more, there's more of an emphasis on mood and more of an emphasis on, like 1897, it's like, if 1897 is like the summer of love, Leviathan story leading into 1970 Parallel Time and ending with 1995 is Altamont. It kind of has this nice, really nice dark undertone that never feels oppressive. I mean, it's hard to believe they were actually showing this at like 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, because it's not grim. It's just really dark and moody, and it's gripping because you can't believe they were getting away with that on daytime television in 1970.
There's a show that I think copies Dark Shadows in many ways with their storytelling, with what they do. with what Dark Shadows is doing in 1970 for their 1970 parallel time story, in my opinion, it sort of reminds me of way, 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 way later in the 90s what Stargate SG-1 is going to do with the alternate mirrorverse, where Daniel Jackson goes through and it's an alternate reality.
Now, I have not seen Stargate SG. I know the premise of it, but tell me, go into a little more detail about how they handled that story and what the parallels are with Dark Shadows.
Okay, now they handle it a lot. I'll say this: they handle it a lot differently because, in my opinion, the first time when you see Daniel go back or go through this mirror-looking thing, it's an alien device, is what it is, and he goes through it, and instead of him, whereas in the movie, if you saw the movie, where Daniel Jackson figures out the Stargate and all that stuff, well, here in this alternate reality, he never did. He never came to work at, go on that mission that they went on in the movie. He actually, his character, well, not the Daniel Jackson that goes to the mirror, but the Daniel Jackson in that reality dies in an alien attack by the Gould. Captain Samantha Carter, who's later Major Samantha Carter, etc. Her and Jack O'Neill are engaged. Again, I don't know how much of SG-1 you've watched, so Don S. Davis's character is not in charge of SG-1, where in their reality he is in charge of SG-1. Colonel Hammond.
Did they give him long hair like they did Carolyn? That's my question.
No, but what's not shocking is that Carter has long hair in the alternate reality, and in their reality, she has short hair.
Diabolical.
So there's.
Does she have a beard?
No, she does not have.
Because Jennifer Connelly does in Dark City, I'll tell you that. Those first scenes of her in the nightclub, she looks like Rhett Butler. Continue.
But, and when Daniel finally gets back, that reality has been, we'll say, destroyed, I guess. And he warns them, because it happened in that reality, well, the Gould are going to come attack Earth in our reality. And he doesn't want to see it happen a second time. So, therefore, they go and stop it in their reality. With the help of
Gould, was it Elliot or Dana?
Pick your poison. No. Yeah. With the help of the Asgard. So.
Well, that guards you from the back.
Yes, it does.
Hammond's looking at me funny.
Oh my god. But so with Dark Shadows, I like how they start this. Here's Barnabas. He sees the book, The Life and Death of Barnabas Collins. And I'm not trying to Monday morning quarterback this. My only issue with this is when he picks up that book and sees the cover, he should understand right away, hey, in that reality, I lived and died. Me. Whether it's not necessarily him, but it's another Barnabas who lived and died. And I feel at times they don't get it across that he feels like he understands, because he wants to live a different life. He's a vampire again at this point. He feels if he goes to this alternate reality, things are going to be different from him because of that book. And I'm thinking, no, they're not going to be different for you, but you're going to cause a lot of indifference.
Well, maybe, and stay with me on this.
Okay.
Maybe he was planning to find an I Ching, go back to 1795 when with the book with him, right, kill that Barnabas Collins and take over his life.
That would be good. I like that.
That's just science. Like extends, it's just good science.
Yeah. Okay, so now we got to figure out a way to get me back to like 1970s so I can tell the writers, no, here's how you do that. So when I come back here, you're happy.
Right. Right. But written by William Hollinshead Loomis, so Willie.
Yeah, nobody knows his middle name. Willie's very protective of that middle name. He is. He's like, Barnabas, nobody knows my middle name.
He is.
It's like Rumpelstiltskin. He's gonna jump up and down and go back to the blue whale.
But I like that, Gordon. I like that a lot. But
and actually, you know what we should do? We should email Big Finish. They'll turn it into an audio.
We'll have to put in a disclaimer.
Yes, it's a fine idea.
No, you don't have to pay us. We don't expect it.
Right. Yeah. We're doing. This is free. This is on us.
Big Finish, I don't think it's in the Dark Shadows business anymore, are they?
I don't think they've done anything since 2019. They've had some like things in production, but I think with COVID, especially since they're dealing with a lot of stateside people, it may be a little trickier.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they still have the license, but it's one thing about Big Finish. You give them a franchise, they will do every single variation and every spinoff they can think of.
Give them any chance, they'll take it.
Yes.
Like the Laverne and Shirley series that they did with Colin Baker.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was wonderful.
Now I pitched a story to Big Finish. They asked me to pitch a story, and I pitched a great one. It was this is just a total diversion, but why not? Like the whole show is, though. The idea was it's when Quentin is possessed by Count Petofi, right? And Count Petofi's planning for the future. And it's just a phone call. It was like a 20-minute episode. It was sort of like a short. And 10, 20 minutes. And it's going to be David Selby on the phone, possessed by Count Petofi, trying to convince the Hellfire Club to prepare all of these accounts and all of his Count Petofi accounts and move them into the name of Quentin Collins. And he's doing it with the voice of Quentin Collins, so they don't believe it. And it's like a Bob Newhart phone sketch. And it just would be David Selby on the phone, saying these things, then pausing and having to explain again what was going on. And that was going to be it.
Well, would this have involved a cameo involving Diana Rigg in her Queen of Hell costume from that one Avengers episode?
It doesn't have quite the same impact in audio.
Well, they could use it for the cover.
They describe it. He would just lovingly describe it. God, they could get Peter Wingard, who was in that episode. He was the Hellfire guy. And he's also Clytus in Flash Gordon and Jason King. He was a big star in England. And then he got caught in a bus station men's room with men. And that kind of killed his career. Now, look how uncomfortable we've made Jewel. I'm sorry, Jewel.
Well, Joel, let me put it this way. Peter Wingard, people put a lot of blame on Peter Wingard, but who's worse is Jimmy Savile. Google it. I'm not going to explain it. This is a family podcast. Just
like the time
you just Google Jimmy Savile.
Like the time Wallace told me to Google Lemon Party. Ooh.
This is a family podcast? This is
Well, that's what Patrick told me.
No, it's not a family podcast.
Good.
Good.
Okay. Good. So the largest in Hollywood was Milton Berle. That's why he wore the dresses. Followed by Forrest Tucker from F Troop, and hello Val. Followed by Roddy McDowall, and then Lon Chaney Jr.
Okay.
And there's a good Milton Berle story, I'll tell you. And it's this. So Forrest Tucker allegedly was quite impressive. And it was with all these other Hollywood guys at like the Hollywood Men's Athletic Club or something. And they all thought maybe Forrest Tucker was more impressive than Milton Berle. And so they kept bugging Milton for a comparison. And Forrest reveals, and Milton takes one look and says, all right, but I'm only going to show enough to win.
I have a question. Go ahead.
Well, I was about to say, I have a question kind of related to that.
Sure.
And it's a Forrest Tucker question.
Oh,
Is there any reason why he just randomly showed up on the Dark Shadows set during the 1970 parallel time wearing his F Troop costume? I mean, any explanation for that?
Well, he was dating he was dating Nancy Barrett after the whole David Ford thing. The closest she could come to David Ford.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure.
So here's a question for you guys. Laura Parker's going to play dual roles here as Alexis Stokes and Angelique. What were your thoughts on that? What were your thoughts on that?
You can never get enough Laura Parker.
Yeah, I mean, what's better than Laura Parker? 2 Laura Parkers.
I really like how for the first, 1897, she shows a little bit of good streak in her. But I love how she's a completely different character. I wasn't looking at her like Angelique when she introduced herself as Alexis. I really like the look, how they made the character feel different. And that, I think it's as much on her as it was the writers. She really does a great job selling sympathy because her father's a dick.
They're having, and she gets to have the fun of basically being on vacation. Because, nothing that she's doing has any real consequence, because she knows as an actress, she knows that she can really, really, really have fun because it's basically a rental. They can, the storyline's a rental. They can trash it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think of Cyrus Longworth?
I got a lot to say, Gordon. What do you think?
Well, I think that I think that Cyrus Longworth was I think John Yeager is the more interesting of the two characters, simply because Pennock really goes to, really just pushes the evil in Yeager, whereas I think with Longworth, that kind of.
Hello?
Gordon, you're frozen. It looks like you're showing off magnificent breasts that you're holding.
Nope.
I don't know what's. Oh, there you are. You're moving.
There. Can you repeat yourself?
Sorry about that. Yep. Sorry. We had technical difficulties. I was saying that you need kind of that nice guy character to contrast with John Yeager, because Yeager is, he's like mean and nasty and good at it. But, I think he can be a little, I think Longworth might have been a little bit too soft, but that's just me.
No, Yeager is a much more complex character than I think he's given credit for. For one thing, they realized that Chris Pennock was far more talented than they had any idea when they first cast him as Jeb. And I think they probably would have conceived of the character Jeb a little differently had they known just how talented. Do you need a knife? Just how talented he was. So you have that. The second thing is that John Yeager, I will argue, is not necessarily evil. He is a completely free agent. He is true chaotic neutral. He only really, really gets oppositional. I mean, for one thing, he experiences a lot of joy, a lot of great childlike joy of just being completely free. Talk about a Nietzschean Superman. That's who he is. And it's really, he's just a character of pure passion. And it's when he is almost to a godlike extent. And it's only when he is opposed by small minds or, what he considers to be just, assholes, that he turns the tables, because he really is a man who exists beyond consequence, because he can always go hide, literally, HYDE. But seriously, he can. And I look at the other side of John Yeager. Imagine if John Yeager just happened to luck into being unopposed. That, Buffy Harrington says, cool, John, you seem like a nice guy. Or you seem like a powerful guy. Because imagine if somebody had started really, really, really harassing her. Well, bam, that would have been it there. And imagine if John Yeager were your best friend. And I mean, he would do anything for you, literally anything for you. But I think he's more complex than we give him credit for. And you can put some of that on the writers, because they take these old stories and they have the time to explore them with much greater dimension than, the authors did. And they're standing on the shoulders of those authors. And it's really the first postmodern storytelling, because they're able to kind of look and say, well, okay, we have this Jekyll Hyde thing, but now let's look at it seriously. Now let's expand it. And indeed they did. I really like the character of John Yeager. I mean, he's a terrible person. I certainly wouldn't want to be on his bad side, but I often think about what it'd be like to be on his good side.
I think I have a sort of a weird question with John Yeager. And we know that Cyrus Longworth helps cover up Anthony's death, right? So was John Yeager already there prior to the serum? I'm not meaning literally.
Like inside.
Right, inside his head.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's the one logic I've taken away from every Jekyll and Hyde story is Hyde's already in you. Hyde's, to quote Dr. Sam Loomis, we're all afraid of the darkness inside ourselves. And Hyde is that darkness in Cyrus.
Now, Gordon,
sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, keep going.
No, I was done. Go ahead.
Gordon, I'm interested. Your training is as a psychologist. You're a social worker, psychologist. What are your thoughts on the John Yeager, Cyrus Longworth dichotomy?
Well, let me just say that it's been a while since I've done any kind of psychological work, but I think with Yeager, and it's kind of an extension, like you said, Patrick, of the Jekyll Hyde stories, because usually the Jekyll Hyde story, the idea is Hyde starts out small, Jekyll is bigger, and then the two kind of increase. And I think there's something about the fact that Cyrus Longworth is relatively one-dimensional compared to Yeager, as you said. And I think there's something about the fact that for a lot of us, it's not just the darkness, it's the kind of the people we'd like to be. Like in my head, I like to be the kind of guy who can just walk in a room and start and kind of own the room. I used to be very shy and very not outgoing, and I had to learn how to do that. And I think Yeager is kind of the idea of Hyde growing bigger, but instead of being evil or malevolent, he becomes complex because he's more of the assertive, more of the kind of the. I can see Cyrus Longworth wishing he were more like Yeager. I don't think Yeager was necessarily a personality in his head, but he may have been like it's like he may have been the Cyrus Longworth's Mary Sue fan fiction version, if that makes sense. It's like who he would like to be.
I think too, Cyrus gets tired of. Cyrus knows that everybody trusts him.
Right.
And when Cyrus Longworth says something, his word is as good as gold. And it seems at times like he's he doesn't want to live that life anymore too. It's as much as John Yeager to me is as much of an escape for Cyrus as anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing. Is he the best? Do you guys think he's the best? Not just alter ego, but serial killer that Dark Shadows ever produced.
Cyrus or
Yeager.
Yeager?
Yeah.
Well, what's his competition?
Well, the Collins Porch.
Well, yeah, that's true. I was looking. The reason I've gone dark here is I was looking for a quote from Chris Pennock about John Yeager, and I think he was a marvelous serial killer. Let's give him a hand. I wound up in correspondence with Chris Pennock about Yeager, and here's just one quote from Yeager or from Pennock. He said, "As I remember, I found the secret to Yeager was to find the ecstatic, absolute joy in behaving badly." So take that.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think that's a secret to Yeager. It's the you get to be bad on a regular basis. He gets to be bad on a regular basis. He gets to do the stuff that he always wants to do. It's like, everyone wants to tell someone off, or say, when you're in college, say, tell someone you have a crush on, you need to ditch the loser. He's nothing more than Danny the Donut Boy. I'm the guy you want to be with. And I think Yeager is that idea of he's the Cyrus Longworth self-created fan fiction version, but he also allows Longworth to do the things he would really like to do, but that if Longworth did them, it'd be like, what's going on? That's not like you. Well, here's a character who Cyrus Longworth is not like, but who can do the things that he wants to do. It's and it's cosplay made flesh, so to speak.
Yeah. It's what, in a lot of ways, Batman's going to do with Harvey Dent later on, Two-Face, if you will. Sort of.
So now imagine John Yeager as Batman. Wow. Like a crime in Gotham City doesn't have a chance. I digress.
So here's when Barnabas finally shows up. Willie is interviewing him. I like that. Now, this is where Anne Rice gets her inspiration for Interview with the Vampire. I like this, but when Barnabas kills Willie, I sort of wish he would have just left, because there's almost no, other than to get back, there's almost no reason for him to stay. I sort of wish he would have left.
Where would he have gone?
Anywhere he wanted.
Well, that's true.
Really?
But the story continues, because then they bring in the real villain, I guess, which is Stokes.
Did you guys like where they finally brought out Angelique and Barnabas is confront? I like how Angelique doesn't know Barnabas. She shouldn't, because this is not his Angelique. And he's all too familiar with the tactics. Did you guys like that? Sorry.
She's kind of like a training ground or something like that. She's not real. She's like Scaramanga's lair. The Scaramanga goes into a man with a golden gun, and he gets to kind of pretend to shoot James Bond and do all these other things. So I think Barnabas probably gets out some of his maybe it's why he can be so cool with her in 1840, is that he's really gotten to get out his aggressions on this, I hate to say evil avatar of an evil character, but yeah, the evil avatar of Angelique, this other form. I don't know. Gordon, what do you think? I don't know.
I kind of think there's an element of that, but also I think with it, there's also an element of the fact that he's done so much and faced Angelique in numerous time frames. 1795, she causes the curse. You got the dream curse. You got the whole Adam deal. You've got 1897. By this time, it's like he's like, you know what? Yeah, I know I'm in a different time band. This isn't my Angelique, but you know what? I know this.
Right.
She cannot get one up on me.
Right.
She may not have the magic. She may not be immortal, but he's like, hey, I know this person. There's no way there, he's, I think he just is so familiar with her at this point. It's like, yeah, whatever, fine. Talk to the hand. And I would personally like to see Jonathan Frid say, talk to the hand.
But that's Petofi.
Right.
Who's your favorite character from 1970 Parallel Time, Gordon?
I'd have to say John Yeager, because he's more than just another Hyde clone. He has, it would be, I could easily see, it would be interesting. I could easily see it had Dark Shadows done the reversal of a John Yeager type who's like, okay, I need a way to get away from, because I'm doing all this stuff that nobody likes, and making a formula that turns him into Cyrus Longworth, Mr. Boring Dude. I would have loved for that twist to have happened.
Yeah.
So, okay, I need to go back in time. I need to use the I Ching and make sure I suggest that to the writers.
Here's a weird talk about parallel time. Imagine a Dark Shadows. Where John Yeager is the breakout character, where he was as popular as Frid was as Barnabas, and so they have to keep him around.
Mm-hmm. That would have been very interesting.
That would have been, talking about a hell of a last year of the show. Send him back to 1840 and try some of Gerard Stiles on.
Yeah.
That's he would have walked out eating the head of Judah Zachary like a large piece of fruit.
I really like the mixture of Cyrus Longworth and the alter ego. John Yeager. I love how Christopher Pennock plays it, because he doesn't, I'm not an actor, so I can't tell you how hard that is, but I can only imagine, that wasn't an easy job, but he made it look easy, and he made it look so effortlessly and good. I dare say he's probably one of the best. I know he's not just another Hyde. I agree with you, Gordon, but he's one of the best, if not the best, Hyde iterations I've ever seen, because he's just so on.
Yeah, and with Pennock, I can see this because I've been rewatching the Leviathan storyline, and when he comes on as Jeb Hawks, I get the sense that like the directors are telling him, just do it like you do on Mod Squad, play the bad kid on like Mod Squad or whatever late 60s teen hip show, and he's like, no, I'm going to do this with some grit. Another director might say, play it like the kids did it. No, like he has that real edge leaning in. And the fact that he goes from this to several other roles, including Longworth and Yeager, yes, there's a lot of work that went into the performance. But the fact that he does it, and it's never the same character, and it's never the same beat, it's never the same actor tricks, that takes a lot of work and a lot of talent.
Pennock, actually, it's interesting. His career suffered because of his integrity, because of his ability to bring dimension to that stuff. He talked about auditioning for an HBO series called First and 10. That was about football players.
Mm-hmm.
He was trying out for the main character. And he said, yeah, okay. So I went into the audition and I gave this really interesting, layered, nuanced, funny, introspective, but he was a big guy. So, just Chris Pennock walks in the room, says, I'm a football quarterback. Okay. As opposed to a basketball quarterback, you're going to believe it. And he didn't say he was too good to be cast in the part, but it was not the simple-minded performance. I won't say simple-minded. It wasn't the elegant, straightforward performance they wanted. And so, you know who they cast? Jeffrey Scott, Sky Rumson. And but Scott had come a long way as an actor at that point, but he was good at playing the square jaw, and that's what they wanted. So in a lot of ways, I think Pennock would have had a bigger career had he been a less interesting, nuanced actor, but it wouldn't have been a better career.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think of the domestic sort of relationship, or the domestic violence relationship between Quentin and Maggie?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the domestics like Hoffman when Julia kills herself. Man, that's Julia's most badass moment.
We are going to get into that, I promise.
Okay. I got a lot to say about this. Gordon, what do you think?
It's one of those things that in the 70s probably was like it was maybe to mix totally mixed metaphors. I think in the 70s it was like the politically correct version of domestic violence for that time. I don't think it's aged very well, but that's just me. I think it's hard too.
Not very well. What do you mean by that?
I think now a portrayal like that, there'd be a little bit more. It'd be a lot more subtle and a lot more explosive. It'd be like subtle than explosive. But I think they were doing the best they could at the time. Like I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I think doing that in that milieu, especially since Dark Shadows, really most of the relationships, it's like with Angelique, Barnabas is just verbally like, no, basically, I hate you, get out of here, until he says, I love you. It's a little, like, for me, it's a little uncomfortable to watch, but I think it's just more of a, it's of its time. I don't see it as bad or good. It just kind of is.
For me, when I think of the domestic violence issues in 1970 parallel time, I think very specifically of Quentin and Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, is that what you're talking about, the relationship that
right?
Okay. Yeah, I don't think they really knew or had the time, ironically, to go that nuanced.
Right.
My not necessarily the best daybook I ever wrote, but my favorite daybook I ever wrote was where I talked about 1970 parallel time, and I talked about Quentin as the actual monster. And that the most powerful piece of acting, I think, on the entire show is, God bless her, Catherine Lee Scott, in the episode where she leaves Quentin, and they're in that argument, and Catherine is a very, very, very meticulous performer, and the writers would write for that meticulousness, and that's great. However, there is kind of a governor of logic. It's very appropriate that she played a proto-Vulcan on Star Trek, because she's a very logical, thoughtful performer. But that scene is one where all planning went out the window in the best way. And she and Selby are really listening to each other, and they're really, really in the moment. They're completely involved in that. And you see work that Catherine does that's completely different, and it's marvelous. It's so real. And Dark Shadows was no Star Trek in the social progress department, and yet I think when she leaves him, when she basically says no, Quentin is worth this, was a hopefully a very inspirational moment for some women out there somewhere. Jewel and I have talked in previous episodes that we both have extremely strong feelings on domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, every rational human does, but for us, it's very, very, very close to the bone. And when I sat down to write that, and I realized I was writing about that, and it was as strong as it was and as passionate as it was on the show, and in what it brought out in me, I felt like I kind of leveled up, and yeah, in reality, once you get beyond the comic book stuff, Quentin is the monster, and the hero is Maggie, and the climax of it really is that episode where she has the guts to say no.
Yeah, when she walks out, it's very powerful, and yeah, you're right, Gordon. That the domestic relationship, that in a domestic violence relationship, it would get very physical. And I remember my dad just grabbing my mom and hitting her in the back or in the stomach. He wouldn't hit her where someone could see it. He'd hit her where someone couldn't, or he'd hit us kids where we couldn't see it. And it's something I'll never forget the rest of my life. And it's something that, you, as someone who lived that through something like that, you can hope that your parent wises up and gets the hell out, takes you with them, but there's no making somebody either.
Yeah.
There's no making somebody leave. And it's sad that when I left, I know my mom was still there, and she died shortly after I left. And it's like, it's not a coincidence that she died because of the way he was fucking treating. The way he was treating her. And it's sad, but it's something I live with every day. And somebody said, "Did your parents ever teach you anything good?" I said, "My mom taught me how to be a decent person." And I said, "Though he doesn't deserve the credit, my dad showed me how not to treat a woman."
Yeah, I didn't grow up with domestic violence, but I did grow up around a lot of emotional and verbal abuse. So for me, I'm not used to I'm not, the dynamics for me are a little different because it's less about the control is less about the actual physical hit,
Right.
and more about kind of either hitting the emotional core. So it's like like my father was really good at saying the kind of thing that it hits you right in a very sensitive area, and you don't even know how he went there. And it's hard to describe because I don't know, I don't know your sore spots, but like a very basic level example is I remember my dad took me to Gertie's, which is an ice cream parlor in Chicago. I'm like 10 years old. It says order anything. I order a tin roof, which is basically vanilla ice cream with Spanish peanuts and hot fudge and as I'm eating this, Dad's telling me how I need to lose weight. So, and it's silly, but it's also why I'm probably, since I didn't grow up being hit or watching other people get hit, that kind of nuance maybe is escaping me because I don't want to, you have your experience too. You can see that more than I can. I see more of the psychology of it because I grew up with that particular dynamic, if that makes sense.
No, it does. My father said things to me too, where I didn't ask for this, but I knew what it was. I'm not stupid. I knew what it was for. He went out and bought me a basketball, and I knew what it was for. It was for hitting us. And I said, "No, I don't want it. I don't want it." And he said, "You fucking take it, you fucking retard." And I'm like, I didn't. And he just shoved me down, and I'm just like, this is why I didn't take it. Because it's basically like a bribe or blackmail. That's how it felt as a kid. I'm 11 at this time, and I'm just like, no, I'm not stupid. I know what that's for. You can call me all the names you want. I'm not an idiot. That's basically what it is. It's basically like, oh, here's your present for me being an asshole dad. And that's what it is. That's how some people. I hate to say some people aren't meant to be a father, but some people just aren't. There are people out there who just don't need to have a kid.
So, let me ask you something. Was there for you something cathartic in seeing Maggie hold Quentin accountable at that moment?
Yeah, I when she walked out, I got it. It's something I wish my mom would have did.
Catherine indicated to me that they were on the set and in the writing room very aware of the fact that Quentin was the monster, the very real monster, and in that storyline, and that they knew it was going to go over a lot of. Well, this is me now reading into it, but I think the thought was they knew it was going to go over a lot of heads, but that the cast and the crew and the writers, that was very purposeful, and it's not the last time that they would do this, because they come back and they revisit it again with Morgan as this, ostensibly perfect alpha male who's just a piece of shit. And he ends up getting his also. And I think at some point there was a social conscience really going on with the writers of the show. It wasn't about race relations, the Vietnam War, things like that. It was about things that were very pertinent, and they had to be subtle about it. Things that were very pertinent to the housewives who were watching the show and the kids of those families who are watching the show, who, there are lots of very positive role models on Dark Shadows. Even Roger becomes a great dad. And then I think it's also important to hold up the negative example and say, okay, this is what we don't want to be like. You've got your Uncle Barnabas and even your Uncle Quentin. But now here's what not to be. And I think that was on purpose. I think it's a really cool thing that the show did.
Yeah. What's you guys' favorite moment from 1970 Parallel Time? Gordon?
Ooh, I kind of like some of the transformation scenes when Longworth was turning into Jaeger, because they had just discovered, because I think they were using like a video mixer, and it's that really cool effect of like the green and the blue.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I can imagine, whether you're a kid, when you're watching this, you're a 10-year-old kid and you're thinking, whoa, it's the, I mean, there's a similar effect in a Doctor Who story from the 1970s called The Green Death, where you just watch it and you go, I know it's all electronics, but it just looks so cool. I mean, it's the parallel time storyline. I mean, it's hard to pick a single like dramatic moment, because it's like all of Dark Shadows. It's like there's so many of them. It's like you'd have an easier time like figuring out what scenes don't work. But I think with parallel time, those sequences are just the most they're the most mind bending, because it's, even in context, they just look so good.
Yeah.
What's yours, Patrick?
It is the moment where I think Julia truly comes into her own, as honestly the character who will be the heroine of a good chunk of the series, of the Ragnarok sequence and of the early part of 1840. It kind of sets the stage for that, where she's no longer there to pine after Barnabas. She's there, she's on a 5-year mission to kick ass. And it's where there has been so much, Dark Shadows, the characters are remarkably genteel towards villains. I mean, they just let him move into the house, and there's something weird about that Nicholas Blair, but I don't know. It's like, of course and it's when she deals with Hoffman, who's just an asshole, and she does not have the time to screw around, and she just bashes her head in and takes her place. That was a character who was needing a killing. And the only person morally, I think, who could possibly do it is the better version of herself. And in many ways, Julia, as a character, has killed the worst version of herself already from how we see her begin in the series. Now it's absolutely literal. And I just love it. It's just a kick-ass moment of TV.
Were you guys shocked that they brought Grayson Hall, Dr. Julia Hoffman into Parallel Time? Did it shock you?
No, not after she'd already shown up in 1897.
Okay.
As this incredibly immortal character, because don't they try to shoot her at one point and it doesn't do anything because she doesn't have a real body that she's in or something like that? It's like, you. I'm Dr. Julia fucking Hoffman. Take that.
Yeah, there's no butterfly effect in Dark Shadows. It's like, you go back in time. Hey, I'm indestructible. Yeah, shoot me. I don't exist here. Yeah.
And she deserves it because she's theoretically one of the most vulnerable characters on the series. And now it's like, and I love it.
Right. Her in 1897. For those who don't know who have never watched Dark Shadows, it's her astro bodies. So she didn't have a physical body in that time. So it's just her spirit, more or less.
Yeah, you're just talking science.
Weird science, yes.
Yeah.
But it's, and then for when she comes to 1970 Parallel Time, when you see somebody hit Dr. Hoffman, I'm thinking, who did that? Then when you see Julia, I'm like, yes. I was shocked when they chose, well, because they could have put any other character too. So when they picked Grayson Hall to come back, to do 1970 Parallel Time, I was like, that was awesome. That's really cool. And then her idea is to pose as that Hoffman was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's time to take out the fucking trash.
Yeah. What did you think of it, Gordon?
Oh, it classic. I mean, there's no. It's just because it's come so sudden because we're all like to this point, I'm used to, like Julia being the whining and pining for Barnabas. But like, this is where she's like, as Patrick said, screw it. I mean, once you kill your parallel time self, what is there? You can see her next telling Barnabas, you know what? I've saved your sorry ass for too long. Maybe you should let your freaking balls drop. Get a spine and move forward.
Or stop wandering into parallel universes thinking it's somehow going to cure you of vampirism.
Oh. Or, look, you hit, or say, look, Barnabas, Angelique is there. Forget Josette. Angelique is not a hit it or quit it girl. She's a keeper.
Look, Barnabas, you tried the two F rules with Angelique before. Fuck them and forget about them. That didn't work, buddy. Goodness. So my two. Well, I have more than two, but Maggie leaving because it really touched home with me. But I really love the design of Cyrus's laboratory. I thought that was just so neat, and I know they had something like that with Dr. Lane.
Well, I don't know. More weirdly medieval than what
Right. Right. But I like how they do this. It's way better looking. It actually looks like an actual laboratory. And it's just such a cool design. I love it. And I just love the character, like you guys, I love the character of Cyrus and John Yeager. So it was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and like Dark Shadows at this time, at least for me, it looks like they got a little bit more money either that or they hired someone who was really good at like doing a lot with very minimal.
Yeah.
Because it just feels like between this and like it's like from like late 69 on, it feels like, I mean, it's still a soap opera, but it feels like it's a little bit more. It's like like I think like with the 1840 storyline, they had like custom made costumes rather than stuff off the rack.
1841 parallel time.
Okay, 1841. Yeah. But it feels like there's at least, I mean, even though the show was ending, it feels like either A, they were getting a little bit more money because it was like, okay, well, or whoever was on staff, they hired someone who knew how to budget really, really well.
I think Cy Tomashov just really got good I mean, he was already a great designer, but he had to learn to be a great Dark Shadows designer as Dark Shadows was going on, and you can see his skill increase as the show goes on.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the favorite. I love the Judah Zachary wrecked Collins port set design.
Oh yes,
that was so cool. What did you think of that, Gordon?
Oh, that was like, I look at that and I go like I know how they did it, but looking at that, it was just like jaw dropped because it's just, um, especially at that time, the way they shot it, like it's not that kind of usual like, uh, you know, I'm so used to watching like flat, like video from like the 1960s where it has that flat. There's really no depth or like atmosphere to it. It's just like there. But the way that it's constructed and the way that it's shot, again, it has that really great kind of sense of mood to it.
Yeah. What did you think of it, Patrick?
It is a jaw-dropping apocalypse, and it tells you just how bad things will get. And so you don't just have the suggestion or the threat of what might happen, if Maggie becomes Barnabas's vampire bride or whatever. Mm-hmm. No, you see the absolute worst of it, and it has happened, and it will happen. And it was a daring move, and then the fact that Julia and Barnabas wind up going back to 1970 and are on the slippery slope headed towards oblivion, and the fact that they, despite their best efforts, there's nothing they can do to stop it. That's horror.
Yeah, and usually you would make a move like that if you were going to build a different set. Like new Doctor Who is notorious for, they've got one set they use for 5 years. Oh no, we're going to do a new set for a new Doctor. This you would expect that like, okay, the storyline is going to go into, they come back to 1970. Oh, we've redecorated. No, I mean, it's just, it has that. And part of it is story-wise, if they do anything different, it loses that sense of continuity. But yeah, it's one of those, if the intro to Parallel Time was kind of like, oh yeah, this is the 1995 is like, shit just got real.
It gives a very, with the way they did that set and the destruction of Collinwood, it gives a very George A. Romero feel. Not just Doom is imminent, Doom is here.
Yep.
And there ain't shit you can do. And I love it for it. It's so cool it's one of the most cool things. So I'm trying to think of is there anything you guys want to add? Feel free to add it.
Yeah, I for me, when I think of this storyline compared to 1897, it's not great. It is kind of running in place while we wait for the quote-unquote real characters to come back. But David Lynch has a really good piece of advice. And he says, too many people in life spend their time looking at the hole and not the donut. And I think one of the things I'm really happy about this conversation with is that we looked at the donut. And there's a lot of cool stuff in 1970 Parallel Time if you stop demanding that it be 1897.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think too, there's something about the storyline because it's so stripped down, and because to me, it's like I kind of see it as the kind of like the it's a nice sort of charge towards the finish line because they at least tried to, as Patrick said, not only try to potentially reboot the show, but there's a real kind of confidence in we've done this and can do, and they also know that they know their budget, they design 67, but it really kind of ramps up the sense of mood that I think it would be interesting to see if there's a parallel world where Dark Shadows went on into like the mid 70s or even the late 70s to see if it was doing the kind of thing that like Hinchcliffe era Doctor Who was doing, just in terms of melding design and story. It may not be the greatest story in the whole realm, but at least I kind of see it as, you could still tell that there's enthusiasm behind it. And within a year, we're going to get another pair of ghosts, another going back into time story. This feels like there's at least the writers are starting to feel like, yeah, this is a really good opportunity for us to be creative. And I can't fault them for that.
I think the one thing the 1970 parallel time doesn't get enough credit for, it felt like it was challenging the writers a bit too. It was the characters. I'm not saying 1897 wasn't, or not 1795 wasn't, but I love all these. You have Cyrus, who's going to be, his alter ego, John Yeager. You have Alexis and Angelique, and I love how they do Angelique. She's just laying in a coffin, and Barnabas is really he's not so much the centerpiece of the story, but he's now integrated himself into the story, which I love. He's not the main focus of it, but he's part of it, which is cool. It's different to see, right? So I really love how they did this. I don't think it was bad. Mm-hmm. It was just different.
And I think the other advantage is that the storyline is one where a lot of the because half the cast were doing other stuff,
right?
You give the other actors a real chance to shine. I mean, Catherine Lee Scott doesn't just play the innocent ingenue. Selby plays a villain, but then you've got the emphasis on Laura Parker comes to. I mean, I think if you had it more Barnabas centric, the Chris Pennock's performances, Longworth and Yeager, would not have been. It would have gotten pushed to the side.
Right.
And it really has, and even Grayson Hall as Hoffman. I mean, the actors who maybe didn't get a lot of screen time get a real chance to show their stuff. And it's one of the things I love about Dark Shadows is that it gives you these really great moments. And it's like the other thing, I mean, like with Dark Shadows, there's a sense of a whole world outside what you see. And I think this storyline allows you to see more of that world, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does.
Very much so.
Yeah. Is there anything you guys want to add before we go?
Nope. It's good stuff. Thank you, Joel.
Guys, first of all, thank you both. Thank you, Gordon, for coming on.
Thank you.
And thank you, Patrick, for coming on as always. Gordon, I'm going to have to bring you back on, man. We're going to discuss some more Dark Shadows, too, such as Patrick. What's that?
Told you.
Did I doubt you?
No, you didn't. Good. I bring my pals on, and I want to make sure you're proud of them. Butch worked out great. Gordon's a genius. This is terrific.
Gordon, let me know what your schedule looks like, and I'll set something up, and we'll set up a time and a date. And Patrick, I'm definitely going to bring you back on at some time too. For link for where you can get the Dark Shadows Daybook will be in the description box. Written by Patrick McCray. Gordon, is there anything you want to plug, man, before you go?
Well, I have two things that I can plug.
Sure.
The first is I have I am a professional writer, new pulp writer, as they say, and I have an essay about one of the Series 3 Batman stories in this nice collection of essays called Oof, Bop, Splat.
No.
There are three different volumes. I'm in volume 3. And I also want to point attention to my good buddy Jim Beard, who
got the book about Dark Shadows.
Yeah, he just published Returning Home. I think it's called Running Home to Shadows, which is about the show from the perspective of people who actually ran home.
Yeah.
Not too many people know this. Jim is also a professional Bill Mumy cosplayer. So he'll come out to conventions. He'll also try to pretend he's Bill, and I'm not judging, but Jim Beard, Running Home to Shadows, you got to buy that book.
Yep, I will leave
after you buy the Dark Shadows Day book.
I'll leave a link not only for the Dark Shadows Day book, but for Jim Beard's Running Home to Shadows book. Gordon, could you send me a link where to get that book you just showed up there?
In fact, what I can even do is I'll send you a link to this and to my Amazon page.
Yes, please do, and I'll put a link in the description box before I upload this video. Well, as I'm uploading, I should say. So, for Patrick McCray, always a pleasure, sir. For Gordon,
thank you.
It was so nice to meet you. Thank you both.
Good meeting you.
Thank you both for giving me you guys' time tonight. You guys have a great night.
You too.
Take care. Bye.